Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here. I almost said 1714. The 1745 here. We're going to continue with our American playthrough. And we're already having these events pop our text. Okay, carrier hull shape optimization. Hull shape optimization there. One cruiser, no carrier. Oh, hangar, not hull. Boy, I should read better. Okay. Carrier hangar, which is right there. Okay, good. Well, we could start on these, I think, with that. Yeah, radar stations. We'll do radar stations. And since we need to unlock a bunch of these other things, let's get radios going better. Aluminum. Well, we could use more money, but who is it with? Poland. Okay, we'll do that. The capital ship armor. Those big gun battleships out there. Okay, aluminum surplus down, selling to Poland. CAG fighter focus. Over to torpedo bomber. Cuba, no. Okay. Nuclear fission theory. So we've got Einstein. He's figured out nuclear fission. Isotopes. We're going to wait on that. Commander decision. That's down in name. Okay, we got just some other things I think I want to focus more on here. Well, over here, I think. Right. Fighter and flying boat. Yes, got Einstein. He's figured out some of the stuff. To the best of my knowledge, Einstein really didn't work on the Manhattan Project directly. I'm just trying to go from what I vaguely remember, but he definitely contributed some of the basic theory behind some of it, I think, that others sort of worked on in more detail. Okay, we got volunteer surge, great, cool. Carrier armor thickness. Read out, fine, good. Naval bombers. Party rally, yes, party rally. Have the Hulk, yeah. Freeman and Fermi were working on that. Okay. Yeah, you're sort of losing me on the detail there. I do not know much. I've seen a few documentaries on the whole Manhattan Project, but just lost some of the details on it. A lot of it from the things, quite honestly. Damage control. Okay. Too far in advance. Let's move up here. Protection good. Hello, Lawless. How are you this evening? Damage control. Damage. Um, Seeing it, but probably just because I'm looking in the wrong areas. Probably grayed out, maybe. Catapult, closed hanger carrier. I like to find these just so I know what I'm doing. Damage control. I know this is slowing everything up. Maybe I don't have to. One of the things I'm okay. See, it is still here. Okay. Um, Wrong protection. Just like, oh, well, it's over here. See, this is why I'm not seeing it because it's over here. See, it's over here. I wasn't entirely blind. I was just not looking at the right page. Okay, we're gonna wait a little more to invest in our industry or something. Okay, gold mining. Okay, now we're getting 13 instead of 1200. 1300 money. We have another gold mine. Just got a bunch of industry. Pause, pause. Okay, let's trade who? South Africa aluminum. Okay. Okay, one of our copper sales has expired. Fine. Okay, cruiser engine in boilers advance. 41. Yep, that's too far. Sure. There we go. And we now are overproducing. Yeah. Use some of these inferior industrial centers. Detroit, we now have 13 here, so let's do another rares extraction. That's coming online for more, but it's not one of our bigger stuff. Another coal to help that out. Do some more coal there. Lovely coal, yes. Coal is a great material. Ooh, lots of oil there. We will do both an industry and a heavy industry there in Houston. Okay, so that will be considerable amount of industry and coal and all that good stuff. We want to produce lots and lots of things, and to produce lots and lots of things, we need lots and lots of industry. And that just works right. Okay, now back to technology. Just one more, but we have a slot for. Yeah. And we have invested industry here. 10,000 money. Okay, we got 15,000, so I think we can afford that. Now that I think, no, it doesn't drop. Well, seeing that maybe put some more in the. I'll let that continue, I guess. Will this be under carriers? Yes, right there. Okay, and what will be training? Well, we can make that carrier protection and move it to there. Anthracite coal is actually very pretty. Yeah, it can be carved, I know. There are bulkheads. Out. Battle cruiser. Armor looks like. Okay, there's a battle cruiser. Armor thickness. We'll let that continue. Oh, we got to do the bulkheads to something else. Well, let's come over here and do 4-engine armor. Yes. Okay, so that's good, I guess. We could do bomber or CAG bomber focus. What did I click away there? Let's see. That was low popularity. Through horizontal. Okay, CAG through training, which we'll do it there. That would have been oh, um, CAG through training. Okay, well, we're getting rid of that. Medium popularity, low. We're down to low popularity again. Okay, the Littoral. Okay, expand our light aircraft factories. Grand Rapids. And tank for factories in Grand Rapids. One of our tungsten sales has expired. Fine. All right. Maybe just don't burn it. Nothing. You guys just want to get me into another rant about the environment, right? Is that what you're trying to do? Nothing wrong with burning coal. There's all kinds of ways to burn it so it doesn't pollute significantly. Coal is a great store of energy. Energy is important. We want to keep going 20. Yeah, 38. Yeah, I guess we do. Mountain unit training. Yeah, I guess we'll continue that. El Salvador. Yes, you can have rare materials. Engine ground crew, which I think we're going to let go. Artillery firepower focus, though. Um, let's check that out. Yeah, that's too far advanced. And heavy cruiser armament. I know you like gamers rants, but come on, I gotta get through some of this. Yeah, armament. Oh, okay, so heavy cruiser armament grayed out. Fine. Well, let's come over here and get integrated support advanced. Nice. And amphibious unit training. I know where a lot of these are. Played this game a bunch, but they're still, well, okay, we got all those, these four up here. Gates, infantry, and infantry. Let's debunk climate change. Yeah, I could. I've thought about doing other topics. I've saved a bunch of like infographics and whatnot that talk about different warming and cooling periods in history. Um, I'm not sure why all of the warming and cooling there. So, but it's something I would prepare Army Unit Training Advance, or I should prepare, do it so that not just guessing at what I'm saying, have some facts in front of me. And I would be happy with a few of you wanting to present counter arguments, because I know I don't know everything. But you see, I don't know if you guys would rather have me periodically rant about things or me just saying, go watch this other episode thingy over here instead, No, we're talking pilot. Yeah, 38. Let that continue. Okay, Japan annexes the People's Republic of China. Yay, get rid of the commies. And just so you know, I know a few people have complained about what happens here with Japan and China. That Japan kicks butt. And Japan wasn't able to do that historically. But what happens if you have it sort of sit out here historically? Japan will build for the war in China. Japan will try to, though it has garrisons that are too big to move, but would move every single garrison, every single force from everywhere it can, every grand force to China, and then declare war in late 1941, declare war on America and the Western Allies, and have some scripted invasions with forces that, they magically appear, but they're just sort of supposed to be other forces that weren't engaged in China, meaning like sitting at home garrison or something like that. So the AI hasn't been used on them to come in there. And those scripted invasions might do all right, but they just won't build up the Navy. They just won't have enough garrison forces out here. They'll never garrison this stuff very strongly. So it'll be a walkthrough into the point that even with the scripted invasions, I should be able to hold Guam here and the Philippines, and then just invade Japan. They'll just invade Yokohama here and push up to Tokyo and conquer Japan while all the army is sitting out here in endless battles with China. The AI will not rationally do this. There's been talk and attempts at sort of making a Manchukuo, Korea sort of different Japan, have two sort of Japans, and this one fighting here and this one at peace until it declares war on the United States, and then it's sort of the naval one. There's been attempts at that, but none of that's really worked out well. So to give, whether it's the AI or particularly the human, a challenge, they want to have the war in China done and dusted by 1940 or before. So the AI is just incapable of sort of doing this. You need a lot of videos and images to make a decent climate change video, 10 days of work. Well, it would be days of work. And see, I would look at it from a historical perspective as opposed from a scientific perspective. Meaning, whether they're accurate or inaccurate, I'm not going to dispute scientific methods of measuring the climate, the temperature change and or the rainfall change, because I think those are about the only two things you can practically measure. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you can sort of do humidity or something, but really it just sort of comes down to rainfall and climate. And what one of the things they look at is dendrochronology, meaning tree rings, basically. Well, I don't know that. I think tree rings, I don't know if they accurately tell temperature as opposed to water and whatnot. I don't know. And sunlight, and because you can have cloudy, warm days. So I don't know, it talks about a certain element of weather patterns. So, and I have heard, I don't know if it's true, but I think in some cases, now maybe it's more the rare case, they'll put a temperature monitoring thing in a shall we say, outside of the edge of a major city. And then with urban sprawl over 30 or 40 years, I don't know if Paris has grown particularly, but enough urban sprawl will grow out there, and then you have an environment that's more concrete and black roofs and other things that make it locally warmer than it was when it was farmland or non-agricultural, but rural environment, a forest or whatever. And so and these would maybe have been put by the roadside or something near, to be checked, but sort of out in the green belt outside of a city, but the city is expanded, and they don't necessarily take into account for that. But let's just presume, I wouldn't argue against the overall scientific looks at temperature change. That wouldn't be the way I would look at it. It would be entirely looking at historical, meaning written evidence of temperatures in the past. Now, I know and you go back to the Middle Ages or the Roman period, they don't have temperature monitoring that is of a scale that we can calculate. But what they do have is the idea of growing grapes or something in northern Britain and other sort of environmental human records, meaning written records of environmental changes. When is there ice on the river Thames in winter or not? If you go, and I do not believe the river froze over during the Roman period. I do not believe that. I'd have to look. I mean, I may have to look or whatever, but I don't think there's any record of it freezing over. Not that there may be not ice chunks on it, but the idea that you can just march an army or camp an army on the ice, that it's that thick. I don't think there's any evidence of that in old Londinium. So when you look at those kinds of things, that type of record, and that's how I would argue that, yeah, there's regional northern hemisphere, because that's where we have the records of changes over time, and I would argue it based on that and not on the science of this, that, or the other thing, because I'm a historian and not a scientist. But I look at it. Let's see, tree rings are how they know England was hotter during the Roman times than it is now. Okay, but see, I don't know if that's hotter or just better access to water. Tree rings are yearly stuff that depends on the amount of sea rag and other factors. And I don't know how well that correlates to modern tree rings growth. Was more moisture then? Yes, when the Romans got them, absolutely. And see, I don't know, and there's definitely descriptions of the Arabs coming into this part of North Africa, and they go after the Berbers and other, I think it's Numidians, not Nubians, but Numidians, Berbers, and other ethnic groups that are minorities left still to this day. But it's the Arab conquest, and they do some scorched earth tactics, at least reasonably well documented in a few cases, and just burning everything down, trees, forests, orchards, killing all of the livestock, because the Arabs, in some of these cases, they're not necessarily hugely larger populations than the local population, but they want to come in and they're militarily able to, with horses and some improved military tactics, are able to go after some of the local populations. But it's sort of a depopulation tactic, is sort of a scorched earth to depopulate the area so they don't have to govern it, occupy it, shall we say, with lots of occupation troops. So some of it's a military tactic. Also, I do believe, again, not sure, but I do believe some of the goat herding Goats are more destructive on the environment than sheep, though sheep are somewhat destructive, and cattle to a lesser degree, I think. But the herding culture of the Arab comes in. So I don't know how much it is different human, destruction or different agricultural practices that increase desertification, or if it's correlation in that they're coming in during the Middle Ages, just as they're sort of being victorious and wrapping up here, and then they get pushed out of Spain, but they conquer over here, and then sort of the Renaissance is flourishing. If it's then that it just gets drier and stays that, so I don't know how much, but you're right, it was moisture then. So also realize when Beam Slam says corn, he doesn't mean maize, star streak. When you go yummy corn, corn is wheat. Okay, they did not have corn as we think of corn today in Europe during the Roman Empire. That's maize from the Americas, and it's post-Columbian. Columbus and others bring it back. It's small stubby things. It's highly genetically engineered. Even before we doing genes, just selective breeding of different strains of it that got it much bigger to big ears of corn that we know today. Later on, gene splicing and whatnot has changed it even more. But it's the maize. Corn just refers to grain, generally speaking, and not whether it's wheat or others. But so they have the corn dole and other things in ancient Rome, and they're referring to wheat basically, not to what we think of as corn from the Americas that comes into Europe. It was warmer here back then until around the end. Well, yeah, the Dark Ages are. Now, you see, why do we have the Dark Ages? Why is it called the Dark Ages? Well, part of it, for a few years, it actually gets dark. I forget where, but somewhere in the Northern Hemisphere, there's some major volcanic activity that puts up a big dust cloud in the stratosphere that actually it's not like it's nighttime during the day, but it's actually a bit darker for a few years. And I don't know if that is the trigger, because it doesn't last for that long. It doesn't last the length of the Dark Ages, and it's not dark the length of the Dark Ages. But there is a sort of a darkish period. They believe, partially from written descriptions, that people now actually believe it is a bit darker, but they've correlated to some volcanic incident. So that may trigger weather change patterns for the Dark Ages, but it gets colder then, and then in the sort of the medieval warm period gets warmer than the sort of Middle Ages and the High Middle Ages, just before the Renaissance starts. It gets warmer again, and then it goes into another sort of mini ice age in the Northern Hemisphere. So yeah, I know we're back on this kind of stuff when we talk about the Roman. Malaria was rampant in Italy. Oh yes, malaria was rampant in Italy. Now, malaria, and now Ragar, that I don't know how much malaria you're saying is because of climate change. Walachern, am I saying that sort of right, Arno? Walachern, or whatever the sort of island, or was an island out here in this part of Walachern, I don't know, out here. Arthur Wellesley, the Duke of who becomes the Duke of Wellington, brings an army in during the Napoleonic era, and basically gets sort of trapped on the island. And I think a lot of soldiers die because of malaria, because it's sort of swampland and the mosquitoes, not just, maybe also dysentery too, but so this is the 1790s, that they're dying of malaria up here, army in very big thing. but the warmer in Greenland until some point. Oh yeah, oh yeah. No, the Norse settlers. It was warm. I mean, it was grass growing. I mean, it wasn't like tropical warm. Very, yeah, it's very close. Okay, thanks. Well, I can. Yeah, I don't exactly how to pronounce some of these. Yeah, see, I think it's a cyclical thing, and I don't know what always triggers it. I don't know whether it's um, shifting weather patterns, Gulf Stream out in the ocean, or the sort of air jet stream that sort of follows it around, that brings warm weather to northern Britain, or whether it's solar activity, not just solar flares, but more heat radiation, like the sun is sort of pulsing a little bit. Heat radiation from the sun. I don't know if it's shifts in either our how far we are away from the sun, or the angle tilt of the Earth to the sun. But I don't really believe much of it has anything to do with human activity. Now, local climate change, around a major city, yeah, sure, yeah, that whether it's like talked earlier about Edinburgh, lots of coal dust going up and around, and it's black under here with all the coal fires. Yeah, that's going to be local change, and you definitely can have local changes that are human. That are maybe good or maybe bad. I'm not saying that there got to be change is going to necessarily be bad or necessarily be good. Yes, a bunch of pollutants dumped into the air is bad. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying other changes might be good, but you have to look at it that way. Yeah. And so I don't know why it happens, but I have enough evidence, in my mind at least, that says global warming happens in pre-industrial, or when there's industry in the Roman era. Yes, absolutely, but as a percent of human activity, it is minuscule. Mobile Unit Command Arms Advance. Combined Arms Advance. Mobile Unit Combined Arms. 1940. Too far in advance. Heavy anti-aircraft guns advance for light ships, I believe. Here we go. And they're right out. We should do this. And when you have supposed global warming people in America, that, yeah, Green New Deal, forgive college debt, and a bunch of other social programs that have absolutely nothing with greenism, are some of their main features in the Green New Deal. They don't even take it seriously. So that's why I can't take it seriously, is when they, if the green people were going, well, I don't fucking care about college debt. We just got to reduce carbon emissions. No, you put carbon emissions in there, but you throw in Green New Deal or forgive college debt. Got to increase immigration. Got to do this other thing. You got to. And it's all about other things that they're just latching on to. So I can't take them seriously. That they really care. That it's just the sort of cause du jour. We got to fight wealth inequality. What does wealth inequality have to do with greenism? I seem to remember this billionaire out there whose main mission in life is to make electric cars. Light armor designs advance, which is here. If I can keep that we not unlocked yet. Okay, we are doing armor plate thickness and armor cast construction. I think we've got all of these. Got a lot of these ticking by and through. Let's do carrier prototype. Um, yeah, they haven't even. You're right, Starstreak. I don't know that anybody has done any research on cosmic or rays from the sun that may affect climate. They've got to be affecting climate because we know that there's summer and winter, so we know it affects the climate. We been monitoring variations in overall output from the sun? Has it been going up? Has it been going down? I don't know, and it's not just like solar flare activity because I don't know the solar flares and overall radiation coming off from the sun levels are correlating to the solar flare. More solar flares or less solar flares mean more or less radiation from the sun. I don't know. South America, they sacrificed thousands of children to stop climate change, and it didn't work. So we can catch that off the list of solutions. Well, if you're talking, in some of the ancient civilizations, which I forget, there's some of the stuff that I hear that turned into deserts and whatnot. I know. So I read history in Rome era that was polluting some areas, had drastic damage, which affect even farming. Yes, but you see, a lot of their industrial things is they would do things like in Spain, figure out that, hey, that mountain over there has a lot of gold in it. So what they do is they use slaves, and they would dig a bunch of tunnels sort of through the mountain, and then have a lot of beams and whatnot holding up the tunnels, and then they would build an aqueduct sort of over to that, and sort of flood and then erode the mountain down with it, and then after it's all sort of spewed out onto the ground, if you will, go through and chop it up and grind it up to get the gold out of it. They were doing a lot of that. They were also doing some rivers in which instead of like a waterfall, they would direct it over, they would redirect the river, and then it would like step down a mountainside in steps, and each one of those steps would work like a water-driven hammer to like grind up grain or something like that. So you would be grinding grain in an industrial scale, but it was using, again, water. So there wasn't necessarily using, I'm not saying no, they weren't using any, but they weren't necessarily using fire or things that create greenhouse gases, burning coal or wood, as your primary industrial thing. Now they did, again, in the past, they did do local changes. Cyprus is gives its name to copper. You get the word from Cyprus gives its name to copper. They mined basically all the copper out of Cyprus, but Cyprus also was known for trees. And I think it was more or less the last Cleopatra trying to build her fleet cuts down most of the major trees in Cyprus, and the tree industry, shall we say, never recovers for shipbuilding in Cyprus after that. Now, I may be wrong about that, but I know to this day there are not large trees in Cyprus. They've been doing some work on reforestation in Cyprus, since like the 60s or 70s, but it's nothing like it used to be, and they're having serious water problems in Cyprus, and Israel is actually helping them out with, at least the actual government of Cyprus, not the Turkish occupation north of Cyprus, with desalination plants. Israel is sort of number one in the world on doing desalination technology that sort of is a somewhat anti-Turkic sort of alliance between Israel and Cyprus here, trying to help them out with water, and quite possibly part of their, and so they're having trouble with water for human use, let alone for trying to get enough water for trees to grow. But quite possibly, had they had more forests on Cyprus, it would retain more of the water coming from the sky. But maybe that's just other things. So yes, humans definitely affected climate by their actions. I'm not saying they're not, but I would call it local changes, not global. Puppets fuel stockpile. Oh, we don't need any more fuel. We got almost more fuel, so we're gonna let this puppets fuel continue to stockpile up. We don't know how big it is, but it gets to continue. Okay, more money. Good. Copper surplus, less. Yes. Okay. Artillery brigades advance. Nice. Artillery. Okay. Heavy bomber pilot training. That is down here. Something I normally don't do too much of, but yeah, we'll let it continue. Just yeah. Okay, zinc. Soviet. Yeah, we'll buff the Soviets up with some zinc. Long range submarine classes. Great. That's going to be our Gato type submarines that are going to be long range. Batteries. Batteries. It's engine hull, crew berthing. Oh, batteries. Okay, it's 41. So we're not going to do that right now. Okay. Yeah, we'll do now. Yeah. Unit combined arms. Let's shift that over to artillery unit training. And Japan has conquered the Republic of China. And they're creating Nanjing. Okay. Fair Labor Standards Act. Okay, Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938, abbreviated FLSA, also referred to as Wages and Hours Bill, as the United States federal law. It applies to employees engaged in interstate commerce or employed by an enterprise engaged in interstate commerce or in the production of goods for commerce, unless the employer can claim an exemption from coverage. So basically, this is a federal government law that you have to prove see, this is what FDR has done so much damage to the United States. So much damage. This is a law that will affect every business, every bit of commerce, every bit of thing, unless you can claim or prove that you do not do interstate commerce. You know, and interstate commerce could mean, hey, you're a restaurant down here in New Mexico. This is New Mexico. You're a restaurant down here in New Mexico. Do you bring syrup in from out of state? Well, you're involved in interstate commerce. So that's how they get you. So, you know, in the production of goods from unless you're or employed by or engages in interstate commerce. So you're buying something, like syrup from the Northeast, something that can only be grown up there, and you're selling it in your restaurant. Or if somebody shows up in a truck to, I don't know, buy some turquoise Indian made jewelry or something like that, or I don't know, shows up in a truck down here and buys something, and then they drive it to another state. Well, you just sold it to somebody who showed up in a truck, and the company on the side of the truck said Texas, grocery store or Texas store. So you are involved in interstate commerce now, good sir. You have to prove to us that you're exempt from coverage. Not the government has to prove that you are involved in interstate commerce. Unless your employer can claim. So you got to make a claim, and you got to put the evidence, and then the inspector's got to maybe agree with you. This is why it's a problem. And why is this a problem? I haven't even gotten to the rest of the stuff. Haven't read ahead. Never played this before. Well, the cost of living around here in San Jose and Oakland, well, some of the area of Oakland is sort of depressed, but in San Francisco, well, they're on poop patrol, but it's still very expensive to live here. It's extremely expensive to live here, okay? It's extremely expensive to live here. To live out here, it's very cheap, okay? You can buy a huge house out here for a quarter of what it takes to buy a small apartment here. Literally, I'm not making it up. This is both in California, and if you go out to these other places, you can buy a nice new modern house. Well, maybe not built in the last few years because wood and whatnot has gotten so expensive, but built in the last 10 years or so, or 10 to 2 years ago. And you can get a nice modern house, again, for a tenth of what it costs to buy a small apartment in San Francisco. So the wages and rentals and other things are different. So the wages for, now, I see child labor. That's just, no one's going that they should be doing child labor, I don't think, today. But I don't see, prohibited, it does prohibit child labor. Well, good. But it's being done on a national scale. And so the wages out here may only need to be a quarter, minimum wages as doing the exact same job in San Francisco. And let's complete this. The FLSA established a national minimum wage. See, I think that's wrong. Guaranteed time and a half for overtime for certain jobs. I think that's wrong for national. And prohibited most employment of minors in oppressive child labor, a term defined in the statute. I think that is all wrong, that it's done on the effing national scale. I think child labor, oppressive child labor. I think some child labor is good to do. Children, it's good for children to work. I know my mother put me to work gardening and helping her pick up leaves and whatnot and things, and I didn't like doing it, but she made me do that kind of stuff, rake up leaves and pick leaves up and stuff like that, Now it wasn't as a job, and I didn't get paid by my mother, and she wasn't doing it for somebody else. It was just for our house. And so, yeah, working in a factory like that, like they're sort of picturing that. Yeah, I agree. That's not the way it should be for. I don't know how old this kid is versus that kid, but at least the close-up kid here looks too young. But a 14-year-old? Well, I don't know. Now, how many hours a day? What kind of work are they doing there? How dangerous is the work? Generally, not, but, okay, what if it's, a mom and pop store? They used to have them before Amazon. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember that. But, a mom and pop store, why wouldn't you have the kid work in it? And then, okay, if it's not a mom and pop store, it's a grocery store. Why wouldn't you have a kid bag the groceries at the end of the checkout stand? Somebody that's like 12, 14, 15, who wants a job, whether it's they want to buy, these are presumably poor people here that are getting this job back then, so they may want to buy food with it. But maybe in a more modern setting, they want to buy, video games, or they want to buy models to put together, or get the latest hat or whatever is cool. It's clothing, but not clothing to make them look presentable to walk out of the home, but the latest style, the supreme whatever stuff that they want to get a job to have. But if it's something that is so apparently needed to be done, and society's changing. This is July 1938. Okay, 20 years before is 1918. Okay, end of World War I. America in 1914, much of America is non-industrialized. Most of America is non-industrialized. Yes, there are industrial centers. Yes, there's probably as much industry in America as there is in either Germany or Britain in 1914. Now, if you look at the British Empire, not Britain, the islands, but the empire, well, Britain's empire is mostly not industrialized in 1914. In Australia, New Zealand, India, Africa, it's mostly, even Canada, it's mostly not industrialized. Now, Britain, Greater Britain here, yes. Germany, yes, is a lot of industrialization going on, but you look at the scale of America, taking the same amount of industrialization, it's mostly not industrialized. So these are new situations that in 1914 didn't so much exist in 30 years before, in 1880. Yeah, you can talk about, early industrialization in like New York or Chicago or whatever, and the god-awful living standards in those places, and they were god-awful. You're almost drowning in horse poop in some of these cities and whatnot. Just, yeah, it's bad. But most people don't live in those few cities. And in the cities that are around in a lot of places, a lot of it is much nicer. And so a lot of the kids are, and a lot of America is still like in, 1880s, much of Europe. There's still a lot of it, they're working on the farm, or they're working in small cottage, that their parents are working in small cottage industry. So, yeah, this should have been handled on a state-by-state basis, not on a national basis. I think a national minimum wage for America is just wrong. I'm not against the minimum wage. I just think it should be each state figuring it out for itself. And what have you guys been saying? Okay. Putting my potatoes in the oven now, crossing my fingers. I don't make coal. Good luck on that, Bean Slam. FDR saves America by defeating Germany and Imperial Japan. Absolutely. That's what redeems, and I talked about it in the last weekend, what redeems FDR in my eyes. America has been the most prosperous since FDR. Yes, but FDR does so much damage to America. He would be a villain to me if he didn't. He was right about the important thing of defeating Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. He was right about that. He was, and those are sort of like just wrong about everything else, but those things the thing that's most important, he's right about, but he's wrong about everything else. So what redeems him in my eyes is, of course, World War II and his attitude leading up to the war, his positions, that redeems him. Otherwise, he is wrong about most things, and he does about as maximum damage as you can do otherwise. So keeps him out of trouble, but it also Starstreak it teaches them responsibility. Now this is probably what I would go to abusive levels of child labor. I'm not, including the amount of hours, the safety levels, the lack of schooling. There's probably a lot of things I agree that these kids should not be working in this factory, or should even be working on the maybe as many hours on the family farm. Or whatever that I would, even in types and styles of labor that I would agree with, they're probably overdoing it to the level that I would disagree with. So it's not that I think everything was fine. No, and I'm not saying reforms shouldn't have happened. It's just they shouldn't happen in fucking Washington. Should happen in every state capital across America. And see, part of the reason that America can be so great. My microphone. That's better. Okay. Part of the reason America can be so great is it has 50 now, 48 back then, different laboratories, different testing. So each one of these states might do a slightly different version of these laws. Okay, everyone does a different version, let's say, slightly different. Now, some of them might be needing to be different because this up here is winter and it's snowing and whatnot, and kids working in winter chopping ice or something, because they used to chop ice up here or whatever and ship it around, well, not maybe around the world, but to a lot of different places or whatever it might be up here. Laws and child in winter or whatever, or shortened hours during the winter, so because it's darker more often, maybe different laws than for down in Florida. So some of the differences in the laws may be purely regional, based upon whether it's sociology or physical environment, but it's just they may also be slightly different, and then go, oh well, this law didn't go far enough here, but too far somewhere else, because we see here, in this state here, well, kids being able to work 4 hours a day is great for them, but only being able to work 2 hours a day is not enough. So we need to increase, have the experiment of 50 different experiments, and then make adjustments over time to get the best effect. And so it's not the same everywhere, either because, different conditions prevail, but it's also different test cases. And so we're testing it out in different areas. And some of them won't be the best, but we'll hopefully, being humans, we'll learn from our mistakes and improve things, instead of thinking we know it's what's best and we're going to tell it to everybody else. August, Ireland's hottest was, okay, I don't know, but I think it's been beaten later, but by a few inches. Okay, don't know. Hottest record in Denmark. Okay, right. So I'm not pleased. This is what, yes, I agree. Get good. That FDR does. Churchill is the the one, if you had to pick one single person who saves the world, is Churchill, in my opinion. And yes, we can talk about the Bengal famine and some of his other views that are not popular today. Now, I'm not trying to justify the Bengal famine. Some of the, his views on imperialism I do not disagree with, but a lot of modern people do. But Churchill, for all of his faults, you got to forgive him because he saves. Of a single person, he does the most to save the free world. FDR is getting in there, but not quite. The only reason FDR is better, or people might think he's better just because it's leading America and not leading some other nation. So we could do this or gain dissent. Well, we're going to do this and gain popularity, but I think it's bad. Okay, they've created Nanjing, and we're now medium popularity. Mexico wants to build a destroyer, certainly. And let's go back with that. Okay, molybdenum mines are coming online. 2,000 money. Yep, we have the money for that. So let's go for that. Well, I also understand Beam Slam. There has been a bit of a pause in temperature rise. Now, I don't know if it's continuing, but some years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, some of the stuff that I saw, there had been something of a pause in the rise of temperature. Definitely temperatures had risen, but there was like a 10-year pause. I don't know if it's picked back up or whatnot. Okay, so we're going to have an ongoing effect of wages and hours bills from that event, which will reduce consumer goods but reduce resources. Okay. Cast armor construction advanced, that I believe is here. And then we can do medium armor designs. And Beam Slam is right that measuring a few hottest or coolest days in somewhere is not conclusive evidence, but it is indicative evidence. So Starstreak is not proving his case, in my opinion, but is giving evidence that does I do know. Yeah, the hockey stick theory, I think, is debunked, in my opinion, too. Starstreak, and I'd have to look at a little more data. I'm just going off of memory right here, but we're not shooting up like they said 30 years ago when that movie was made, and the hockey stick. Slow rise. Oh, we're spiking. It hasn't spiked. It's either slow rised or paused, but it hasn't come down. That's my understanding. It has not come down in temperatures, and will allow us to do heavy armor. Okay, molybdenum exports. So okay, we'll lose our bonus. Pause. Okay, enforce. Okay, we don't really have much to say about there, but we can see that Japan is cleaning house. Yes, we're going to prolong it, get more popularity. We're going to wait until the war is well and truly going before we decide to change these. Yeah, no, I agree, Starstreak. You're giving good news. He doesn't need to worry so much. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm not. Yeah, I'm just saying he's right. It's not conclusive evidence, but it's also doesn't show that there is dramatic global warming. To the best of my knowledge, there is no, in the last 20 years, there's been no dramatic global warming. Okay, we've got high popularity. That's great. Yeah, well, evil right-wing Elon Musk and his Teslas gun turrets advance. You know what evil right-wing Elon Musk recently said? We might need more gasoline cars in the future. Why? Not because he wants to make more money, because obviously he sells cars that don't need gasoline. It was because he was looking around, and he should know there's not enough charging stations here in America, at least. I know he's building a new factory over in Germany, but there's enough charging stations to charge up all the cars all the time. So we might need. Oh, do we need that much more? Oh, we jumped up a lot. Okay, I didn't. So he's saying we might need more gasoline cars, as opposed to trying to go everything over to electric right away. Not that he's like saying we shouldn't be heading towards electric, but we might need more gasoline cars. Yeah, but you see, I'm not saying he shouldn't read the climate summary, but I sort of kind of think that is is propaganda to some degree. The climate. I think the UN has an agenda to fill, and there are picking the facts that support their case and ignoring. Now, I haven't read it, but I think there is a lot of effort to promote their. I think we'll do another molybdenum. Okay. 2,000 money. We can have that. Yeah, that's part of the problem with the batteries. It's how long they take to charge. No. It's what they cost to make. It's how long they will. We'll postpone at this point. How long they'll last. Uh-oh, uprising. Okay. Well, march up there and then come back to here once you've conquered that and taken the territory back. Okay, basic torpedoes have advanced. Very good. That is here, and it is grayed out. That frees up these. Let's do motor torpedoes. No, I wanted to come here. Save. Well, those watching on YouTube, can you hit that like button? Because see, all of these words that I've been saying are going to get me shadow banned. Because I do know they very much say they go through the audio of all videos going up on YouTube, and they say they're mostly looking for naughty words like F-bombs or using N-words or whatever, whether it's the World War II N-word talking about these guys, which I use a lot when it's appropriate, or the other talking about the negative word for black-skinned people, which, yeah, fine. But that word I don't use. But they say they're talking about naughty words, but I also think climate denying is reason to get shadow banned. So yes, smash the like button, but also make a comment. Tell me why I'm wrong about this, or why Starstreak. I know you if you're watching this, it should be coming up on your screens. Starstreak's comments. Tell him why he's wrong. That's fine. We're adults. We can take it. We were born before it snowed and everyone was a snowflake, so we're good. So tell us why we're wrong if you like. Just help us grow. Hopefully, this overall series is meaningful to you, because I am talking about things like the changes in society that we faced coming from an agricultural to an industrial society, a society which in America, since before our founding, we have strongly supported education. Was a core tenet of America. The literacy rates at the time of independence was much higher in America, in the American colonies, than it was back in Britain, and continued to be until modern schooling comes into Britain. Literacy rates are much higher in America, but even then it's still primitive amounts of education going on in the agricultural society, in which a lot of children did work in all kinds of and they still got some schooling, but in all kinds of conditions, but again, mostly agrarian, not non-industrialized things. And then the shift into industrialization, and then the changing attitudes of children working in that industrialized society has changed. And yes, society needs to deal with it, but I'm, like, as you can tell, vehemently against it being done on a national level for a country of this size. Doing it on the freaking national level for Belgium, sure, that makes perfect sense, but doing it on the national level for a country the size of America, not so much, especially with cold, hot, it's different environments, different settings. So yeah, and I think it's worthy exercise to look at the changes of society and history, and how that affects things and how we learn from it. So I hope it's an exercise that it's more than just watching me play a game. It's examining the human condition and such. So hope you think it's worthy enough to support, and so please do so. Thank you so much, everyone. See you next time for, yes, more Hearts of Iron.